एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज के वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे मुल्क राज आनंद और उनके वर्क कुली के बारे में। चलिए पहले मुल्क राज आनंद के बारे में डिस्कस करते हैं। Mulk Raj Anand was born on 12th December 1905 in Peshawar, India, now in Pakistan. He died on 28 September 2004 in Pune. He was a prominent Indian author of novels, short stories, and critical essays in English, who is known for his realistic and sympathetic portrayal of people struggling with poverty in India. Hand in hand with pioneering novelists Raja Rao and R.K. Narayan, Anand laid the foundations of the English language novel as a genre in Indian literature, education, and early career. Anand graduated with an honours degree in 1924 from Khalsa College, Amritsar, and pursued additional studies at the University of Cambridge. He later earned a PhD in philosophy from University College London. During his time at university, Anand's frequent meetings with the Bloomsbury Group inspired him to explore innovative narrative techniques in his works, particularly in his seminal novel Untouchable 1935, in which he sought to depict the harsh realities of social injustice in India through a modern lens. He recalled his encounters with illustrious writers, artists, and critics including D.H. Lawrence, Clive Bell, Nancy Cunard, E.M. Foster, Eric Gill, and Aldous Huxley in conversations in Bloomsbury. Anand was one of the founding members of the Progressive Writers Association established in London in 1935. This organization aimed to address social issues through literature and advocate for social justice and equality in pre-independence India. It included several writers and intellectuals such as Ahmad Ali, Premchand, Ismet Chugtai, Faiz, and Sadat Hasan Manto. The associations emerged from a meeting in London where Anand, along with Sajid Zahir, Jyotirmaya Ghosh, and others drafted a manifesto outlining their objectives to confront hunger, poverty, and political oppression through their writing and political activism. Anand attended significant international conferences in 1935, such as the International Congress for the Defense of Culture in Paris and the World Conference of Intellectuals in Madrid. At both conferences, Anand emphasized the importance of freedom of expression as a fundamental right necessary for addressing social injustices. His belief that literature should challenge oppression aligned with the discussion at these gatherings where participants sought to defend cultural values against facial ideologies. During his 20-year stay in Europe, he became politically active in India's struggle for independence and wrote a series of diverse books on aspects of South Asian culture, including Persian painting, curries, and other Indian dishes, the view of art, the Indian theatre, and Seven Little Known Birds of the Inner Eye, the last two written after his return to India. Notable works. A prolific writer, Anand first gained wide recognition for his novels Untouchable and Coolie, both of which examine the problems of poverty in Indian society. Untouchable is considered a landmark work in Indian literature for its raw portrayal of the harsh realities faced by the so-called untouchables in Indian society. Anand's depiction of Baka's struggle in Untouchable highlights the systematic oppression and social injustices rooted in the caste system. The novel was groundbreaking for bringing the plight of these marginalized people to the forefront, challenging societal norms and encouraging discourse on caste discrimination. Coolie is significant for its exploration of universal themes related to human success, suffering, and resilience. And its picaresque narrative illustrates how to economic hardships transcends caste and religion, fostering a sense of fraternity among oppressed. This aspect makes the novel relevant across cultures and time periods as it addresses fundamental human experiences. Among his major works are The Village, The Sword and the Sickle, and The Big Heart. Anand wrote other novels and short story collection and also edited numerous magazines and journals, including Mark, an art quarterly that he had founded in 1946. He intermittently worked on a projected seven-volume autobiographical novel entitled Seven Ages of Man, completing four volumes, Seven Summers, Morning Face, Confession of a Lover, and The Bubble. We could discuss करते हैं. Coolie is the second great political novel published in 1936. It narrates the adventures of Munno, an orphan hill boy who is hardly 14 years of age, living with his uncle Dayaram and aunt Gujri, and content in the idyllic surroundings of his native village, Bilaspur. In spite of their ill treatment, he is forced to go to town to earn his livelihood and arrives at the house of the sub-accountant of the Imperial Bank, Shamnagar. He is ill-treated by a shrewish and vindictive wife of Babu Nathuram BBG, and only Chota Babu, Nathuram's younger brother, is kind to him. Being tortured in the house, he runs away from there and relives himself at his second employer Prabha Dayal's house as worker in his pickle factory, but he is also ill-treated by Prabha's co-partner Kanpat. But unfortunately, his master ruined by the dishonesty of Kanpat, he is again forced to leave Daulatpur forever. He started his work as a coolie but faced tough competition from other coolies. He reaches the railway station to work as a coolie but is scared away from there because he has no license. From the struggle, he is rescued by an elephant driver and he is helped by him to reach Bombay. In Bombay, he meets with a vagrant family, Hari and his wife Lakshmi, and he becomes a worker in a cotton mill with them. He earns his bread in a worst working conditions, living in a dilapidated and insanity pavement. He grows a good friendship with Ratan, who descends him into the red light district and witnesses a labor strike and Hindu-Muslim riots, which are perhaps engineered by the factory bosses to break an impending strike. Last but not the least, he is knocked down by the car of an Anglo-Indian woman, Mrs. Mainwaring, who brings him back to Simla from Bombay and is appointed as a page cum rickshaw puller. It has been hinted that she uses him sexually. By and large, overwork brings illness and he dies of tuberculosis. Mono is a universal character symbolizing suffering and misery of the poor and exploited masses of India. Thus, the suffering of Mono, a coolie, attains epic dimensions and intact a universal significance. Characters: Mono, an orphan hill boy who is the protagonist of the novel and is the coolie to whom the title alludes, is also called Mundu. Dayaram, Munu's uncle, who is a peon in the Imperial Bank at Shamnagar, he is Munu's guardian. Jaising, one of Munu's village playmates, who is a rival for the leadership of the village boys. Bishan, a fat boy who is a friend and playmate of Munu and takes his side. Bishambar, another of Munu's friend, who is described as a fiery little boy and sides with Munu against Jaising. Pearden, head peon of the Imperial Bank at Shamnagar, under whom Dayaram works. Dayaram addresses him as Mia Sahab. Nathuram, the Babuji in whose house Munu works as a domestic servant, is one of the bosses of his uncle, being the sub-accountant of the Imperial Bank at Shamnagar. Uttam Kaur, the Babu's wife, the BBG who is Munu's mistress in his first job as a domestic servant. Prem, the Chota Babu, Nathuram's younger brother, he is a doctor by profession and is the only man in the Babu's house who is kind and considerate to him. Leela, the Babu's younger daughter who monopolizes most of BBG's attention. Shaila, the Babu's elder daughter who is at first friendly to Munu but later humiliates him so that he takes revenge on her by biting her on the cheek. As a result of this transgression, which is interpreted as an attempt to outrage her honor, Munu is beaten mercilessly by his master and decides to run away from the house. Seth Prabhadayal, Munu's benefactor, who takes him along to Daulatpur, the Seth later becomes bankrupt and leaves the town. Kanpat, Prabha Dayal's dishonest partner who is responsible for his ruin. Ganpat is cruel towards Munru Maharaj, a large-limbed, mentally retarded labourer who was made to slave in the pickle factory and later forced by Ganpat to work in his new factory, Bonga. A deaf mute who was another of the workers in the pickle factory of Prabhadayal and was later appointed by Ganpat Tulsi, the head worker of Prabhadayal, who was loyal to him even after his financial failure. Lachi, one of the women workers in the pickle factory who assumes to be Ganpat's paramour. Todarmal, a Rai Bahadur whose house adjoins Prabhadayal's pickle factory, he has Prabhadayal arrested for debt through his son, who is a police officer. Ramnath, the Rai Bahadur's son, who becomes a sub-inspector of police and has Prabhadayal harassed. Lady Todarmal, the Rai Bahadur's shrewish wife who pesters Prabhadayal and Ganpat because the smoke from the oven causes a nuisance. She also advances a loan to Prabhadayal after he has appeased her by his gifts of jam. Edward Major Banks, the British doctor who is the health officer of Daulatpur and to whom the Rai Bahadur makes a complaint against the owners of the pickle factory. The Dutt brothers, the landlord who owns the property which constitute Prabhadayal's house and factory, Hemchand. One of Todamal's colleagues of the municipal committee, he is the secretary of the committee, the prostitute on whom Ganpat squanders the money which he has collected from the merchants who deal with the pickle family. Amir Jan, the female giant, was the star attraction of the circus in Daulatpur. Hari, an old mill worker in Bombay who gets Munru a job in the cotton mill and with whom he stays while in Bombay. Modi, one of the children of the labourate Hari. Lakshmi, Hari's wife, she's tender towards Munru and it appears at one stage that her feelings for the boy are not entirely those of a mother. Nadir Khan, the Pathan Chowkidar who guards the entrance to the cotton factory, Lal Kaka, a Parsi Iran boy of the cotton mill, Jimmy Thomas, the chief foreman, the Sir George White cotton mill. He is known by the name of Chimta Sahib. Shabu, one of the mill workers whose fowls are taken away by the shopkeeper for an arbitrarily low price since he has to send them to the postman as a gift. Badadan, the foreman's bearer who comes to the shopkeeper with demands from his master. Ratan, the ex-wrestler who works at the cotton mill and not only teaches Munu the job but stands with him and Hari in good state. He is dismissed by the foreman because of his attitude to defy and self-respect. Shibu, the mill worker whose room Hari's family and Munru share after their hut is flooded during the rains. Pyari Jan, the dancing girl in Bombay to whose house Ratan goes and once and takes Munu along with him. Omkarna, the president of All India Trade Union Federation, whom Ratan meets with a complaint after his unfair dismissal from the factory. Sodha, one of the union leaders who have leftist leaning and incites the workers to go on a strike after the announcement of short work is made. Muzaffar, another union leader whose views are similar to those of Soda. Stanley Jackson, an English unionist who promotes trade union activity in Bombay. Mr. Little, the English manager of Sir George White Cotton Mill. Reginald White, the proprietor of the cotton mill, who orders that the mill should observe short work. Sir Nellie Thomas, Jimmy Thomas' wife, who Monroe meets when he goes to the foreman's house to plead for Ratan's reinstatement. Mrs. Mainwaring, the Anglo-Indian woman whose car knocks down Mono, who decides to take him along with her to Shimla and employ him as a domestic servant. Sir K. Mrs. Mainwaring's daughter, who is in the car with her when the accident takes place. Heinrich, a German photographer whom Miss Smith marries. Penelope, May's daughter by her German husband. Aga Raza Ali Shah, a captain in the Zalimbur army who marries after her German husband is interned. Guy, Guy Minwaring, May's third husband, whom she marries after obtaining a divorce from Aga Raza Ali Khan. Ralph, Mrs. Mainwaring's second child, her husband suspects that he is really the offspring of her previous husband. Ala Dad Khan, Mrs. Mainwaring's Khan Sharma, under whose supervision Munno works as a domestic servant. Mohan, a young rickshaw puller of Shimla, he has deliberately taken up this work to expedite the luxurious life he has led. As a boy, he is educated and stands by Munno till his death. Major Merchant, an Indian Christian doctor who is the health officer of Shimla, he is called to treat Munno when he falls ill as well as during his last illness, when he instructs that Munno should be segregated and that Mrs. Mainwaring should refrain from visiting him. Exploitation of the poor, capitalism versus labor. The central theme is the systematic oppression of marginalized laborers by the rich. Munno is exploited at every stage as a servant, a factory worker, and a rickshaw puller, highlighting the brutal nature of early capitalism, poverty, and social injustice. The novel depicts intense poverty that robs individuals of their humanity and dignity. Munno's journey is defined by hunger, forced labor, and the helplessness of being at the mercy of wealthy masters. Class conflict and capitalist structure. Anand portrays a harsh social hierarchy where the haves destroy the have nots. The shift from traditional feudalism to a capitalist cash driven system is shown to create deeper inequalities, replacing traditional caste structures with economic oppression. The transformation of caste into class. Although caste exists, the novel argues that poverty and class create a new stricter form of oppression. Munu realizes that in the city, the poor of all castes are equally subjugated by the wealthy. Colonialism and industrial exploitation. The backdrop of British colonialism and Indian industrialization serves to worsen the condition of the labor class. The alliance between colonial power and Indian industrialists result in the systemic abuse of workers, often depicted through the unfair factory conditions. Loss of innocence and human dignity. Munno begins as an innocent boy but is rapidly forced to mature due to extreme hardships, enduring humiliation, cruelty, and eventual loss of his health and life. Economic exploitation and capitalism. Munno is utilized as a domestic servant, factory worker, and rickshaw puller, representing the downtrodden underclass crushed by capitalistic greed. Is constantly exploited for labor and paid low wages, symbolizing the plight of the poor in the industrial Bombay. Hunger and starvation. As a fundamental theme, Munno's relentless search for food drives him his journey from village to the city, highlighting the visceral misery of the underclass. Class and caste conflict. Anand portrays the divide between the rich upper classes, landlord, businessmen, and the destitute, often showing how these conflicts dehumanize the exploited, taking away their dignity. Inhumanity and cruelty. Munno is treated as a commodity, subject to constant verbal and physical abuse, illustrating the lack of empathy from upper classes. Loss of innocence and alienation. An innocent village boy is forced into a harsh urban world, experiencing abrupt degradation and untimely death from consumption at the age of 16. The urban versus rural contrast. The novel highlights the shift from traditional rural life to the chaotic urban existence in Shamnagar, Daulatpur, Bombay, and Simla. Symbols. Munno's body, the physical symbol. Munno's physical suffering is a direct representation of capitalist violence and labor exploitation. His body weakens due to malnutrition and labor, transforming him into an expendable resource. The monkey dance, symbol of dehumanization. When Munno performs a monkey dance for his mistress, it symbolizes how the caste system and authority dehumanize him, reducing him to a subservient entertainer. Food and shelter, symbols of survival. The constant struggle for food and a place to sleep highlights the inhuman conditions of the poor. Food is a commodity that is rarely accessible to them, emphasizing their marginalization. The coolie label, symbol of class. Anand uses the term coolie to define an unskilled worker trapped by class whose labor is exploited and is ultimately seen as suffering mass regardless of caste. The industrial landscape, symbol of modern exploitation, factories in cities like Bombay represent a new form of oppression where traditional rural life is replaced by brutal labor and impersonal capitalist exploitation. आई होप आज की वीडियो आपको पसंद आई। कैसी लगे हमें कमेंट करके बताएं। अगर कोई डाउट्स या सजेशंस है तो वो भी आप कमेंट सेक्शन में ड्रॉप कर सकते हैं। अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी हो तो लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माई चैनल। मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। टिल देन कीप वॉचिंग एंड कीप सपोर्टिंग द सोलफुल डायरी। थैंक यू।